Okay, arranging my 10 favorite superhero films in objective order. And this would make these the 10 greatest superhero films of all time, in my opinion. At number 10, it is going to be Spider-Man 3, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 3. Biggest positives here would be the multiple top tier villains that appeared. Tobey had to handle them one by one, all by himself. The biggest negative, however, was Mary Jane being captured again, even though that led to quite an epic climax and brilliant action sequences. So yeah, Spider-Man 3 is number 10.
Where do all these guys come from?
And number 9, we're going to go with Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man movie. The biggest positives, the main positives, pretty much the beginning of everything. Like how he got his powers, his backstory, him trying to create a superhero costume,
Human spider.
Uncle Ben dying, the unique ways in which Peter was using his powers in this film, seeing Spider-Man in live action for the first time. However, the negatives, if I had to find any, would be the Goblin cover-up, the Green Goblin cover-up. When you really think about that, it doesn't really make a lot of logical sense. Yeah, we know that told Peter not to tell Harry, but how and why would Peter actually go through that? You're gonna strip the guy naked, you're gonna sneak him in, you're not gonna say anything at all to Harry, your best friend and his son. He does honestly deserve to know what happened, regardless of what he may think of his father afterwards. And also the servant dude was also in on the cover-up, keeping that secret. It just didn't really make a lot of logical sense. Okay, moving on to number 8. It is Man of Steel. I think that this is legitimately the 8th best superhero film of all time. The main positives for me was Superman versus everybody. It was him versus multiple Kryptonians. We're talking multiple alien beings that are on his tier, that literally only he can manage to fight, to physically fight. The main negatives, the way the villains adapted quickly, the way Zod and the other Kryptonians adapted to the point where, sure, they weren't flying as effectively as Superman, but they still adapted fast enough to the point of going toe-to-toe with him. And he has been on Earth for several years, and they've been on Earth for what, 2 seconds?
Keep flapping!
And moving on to number 7, we have the first Avengers movie. Main positives for me from this film was the star characters dynamic. Of course, by this point, we would have seen individual movies for majority of the main Avengers cast. And this movie was like the end of an arc. The negatives for me was Loki becoming a joke the further the movie went along. Okay, number 6, Spider-Man No Way Home. The main positives for me, obviously the Spider-Verse, seeing multiple characters, multiple heroes and villains from the different Spider-Man movies that we got from several years ago, all showing up in one film. That was pretty cool. Tobey Maguire getting an acceptable enough conclusion or follow-up to his trilogy, considering that we didn't think that we'd ever get to see him as Spider-Man again. Andrew Garfield showing up, even though his follow-up, his fill in the gaps moment wasn't as positive as Toby. It was still nice. It was still, in my opinion, great story writing, great storytelling. The scene that actually stands out the most to me to this day.
Peter!
He was in the mask, he waved, and then he when he removed the mask, it turned out that it was Andrew Garfield. I was in the theater. Basically everyone cheered. That moment is still one of the funniest and one of the best moments for me in all of cinema. The negatives for me, probably they should have been a little bit more cautious for the villains, especially Green Goblin.
Okay, I'm a nice guy.
And let's follow this up with what is widely regarded as the best Spider-Man from Tobey Maguire's era, Spider-Man 2. And my favorite moment was stopping the train. It showed an immense display of strength, feat, and of course when he was exhausted afterwards, how he was gently taken into the train by the civilians and they tried to protect him when Doc Ock showed up. That was really great. But the bank scene is still one of my favorite moments in all of superhero films. Peter catching it with the web, throwing it back, saying, "Here's your change!" The negative, probably Peter losing his powers. In a trilogy, I probably wouldn't fully support the idea of the main character losing his powers in the second film, because the second film should show the character in peak performance, and then you could probably do the losing powers plot in like the first half of the third movie and then show a return to form by the end. But that's more of a nitpicky reason. Yeah, Spider-Man 2 is number 5 on my list. Moving on to number 4, Captain America Civil War. The final battle scene would be the highlight for me. Tony going up against Captain America and the Bucky. No, we got classic Iron Man versus Captain America. But it's ironic that the main negative for me would be that there was an actual civil war. These guys are smart characters. They are teammates. It shouldn't have gotten to a point where you're trying to kill each other. And I'm not even talking about the final battle scene. I'm talking about the actual civil war when they were all going group versus group. It shouldn't have gotten to that point for so many smart characters. But anyway, that is it. Captain America Civil War, number 4. At number 3, this movie I think is number 1 on a lot of people's list, but I will explain quickly why it's only number 3 on mine. It is Avengers Endgame, definitely one of the greatest superhero films ever made. Probably gave us the highest highs in terms of a climactic showdown versus a main villain. So that is the main highlight for me, the final heroic showdowns, which of course led to Iron Man giving us, at the time, a sad and moving, emotional death scene, saving everybody. The main negatives for me would be the entire middle portion. The time travel bit, I think that kind of reduced the intensity of the film. But I understand that it was necessary after having killed Thanos and Thanos destroying the stones. But it's just that going into the movie, I did not think that we would have gotten a new Thanos. I didn't think that they would have written the old Thanos off that early. Even though Thor killing him was cool in the moment, I didn't think that that would have happened. And I also didn't think that the stones would have gotten destroyed. Personally, would have preferred if they went another route. But I understand that the entire middle portion was pretty much fan service. Okay, now we get to the top 2, and these are the only 2 movies that I honestly did not write down any negatives for, because if I'm being completely honest, you can find a flaw in basically anything ever. But if I'm being objective, I don't think that either of these upcoming two movies have any flaws. Either one of them could have made number one on my all-time superhero movies list. But number two, I'm gonna go with Batman The Dark Knight. And the main highlight for me, the high point, has to be Joker. It's everything about Joker. The vague backstory, what he's supposed to embody, the way he acts from the beginning of the film straight to the end. Batman The Dark Knight is an all-time classic. It was legendary.
Well, then everyone loses their minds.
Which means, of course, by process of elimination, you know that number one is Avengers Infinity War. And the main highlight for me, the main positive, Thanos was portrayed like he was the protagonist of this movie. Pretty damn impressive, going up against multiple heroes, taking out Hulk, the strongest Avenger, early, being one of the few times in all of cinema where a villain actually won, achieved his main goal, achieved his main purpose. There's so much good to say about this movie. It didn't have any drop off at all. It just kept going at an insanely high level straight through. That is Avengers Infinity War. And it is number one on my list of the 10 greatest superhero movies of all time. But let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with this order? What would you change? And also, if you guys are making your own list, what do I have that you would have? And what would you have that I didn't have? I've seen a lot of movies. I've seen majority of the MCU stuff. I've seen all the MCU stuff before Endgame, and I've seen a few since then. And I've also seen a lot of DC stuff, Sony and Marvel, etc. overall. But anyway, that is it. Peace.